The look into the absurd. What if Camus philosophy is the key to unlocking happiness? Introduction. Albert Camus, the Nobel Prize-winning philosopher and writer, is perhaps best known for his exploration of the absurd, a concept that lies at the heart of his existential philosophy. The absurd, as Camus defines it, is the inevitable conflict between humanity's innate desire to find meaning in life and the universe's silent, indifferent refusal to provide any. In works like The Myth of Sisyphus and The Stranger, Camus paints a vivid picture of this existential tension, where individuals are confronted with the stark reality that life, in and of itself, has no inherent purpose. Yet, rather than succumbing to despair, Camus challenges us to confront this absurdity head-on, to stare into the void and find a way to live authentically within it. His philosophy is not a call to nihilism, but an invitation to rebellion, a rebellion that seeks to affirm life even in the face of its apparent meaninglessness. Despite the profound richness of his ideas, Camus is often mischaracterized as a pessimistic thinker, his philosophy dismissed as bleak or overly fatalistic. This perception stems in part from his unflinching acknowledgement of life's inherent absurdity and his rejection of traditional sources of comfort, such as religion or the illusion of eternal meaning. For many, the idea of living in a universe devoid of purpose seems inherently disheartening, a recipe for existential despair. Yet to interpret Camus' philosophy as purely pessimistic is to miss its transformative potential. Camus does not advocate for resignation or hopelessness. Rather, he calls for a radical acceptance of the absurd as the foundation for a life lived with integrity, passion, and freedom. His famous essay on Sisyphus, the mythical figure condemned to eternally roll a boulder up a hill only to watch it roll back down, ends with a surprising declaration: one must imagine Sisyphus happy. This statement, at first glance paradoxical, encapsulates the essence of Camus' thought, that happiness and fulfillment are not dependent on external meaning but can be found in the act of embracing life as it is, in all its absurdity. This video aims to challenge the common perception of Camus as a philosopher of despair. By exploring an unconventional and provocative idea, could his philosophy of the absurd actually hold the key to unlocking happiness? In a world increasingly obsessed with the pursuit of purpose, where individuals often feel pressured to find grand meaning in their lives, Camus' absurdist framework offers a radical alternative. By accepting that life has no predetermined meaning, we are freed from the burden of searching for one. Instead, we are invited to create our own meaning, to live fully in the present moment, and to find joy in the act of living itself. This video will delve into Camus' writings, examining how his ideas about the absurd can be reinterpreted not as a source of despair, but as a pathway to a deeper, more authentic form of happiness. We will explore how embracing the absurd can lead to a life of greater freedom, creativity, and resilience, and how Camus' philosophy might provide a unique lens through which to navigate the complexities and uncertainties of modern existence. We will unpack Camus' concept of the absurd, examine the common misconceptions surrounding his work, and ultimately argue that his philosophy offers a profound and liberating perspective on happiness. Far from being a bleak or nihilistic worldview, Camus' absurdism invites us to confront life's inherent meaninglessness with courage and clarity, and in doing so, to discover a richer, more vibrant way of being. Join us as we embark on this journey into the absurd, and consider the possibility that happiness, in its purest form, might be found not in answers, but in the embrace of life's beautiful, chaotic, and ultimately inexplicable nature. Chapter 1. Understanding the absurd. At the heart of Albert Camus' philosophy lies the concept of the absurd, a term that encapsulates one of the most profound and unsettling truths of human existence. To understand the absurd, as Camus presents it, is to grapple with the tension between humanity's insatiable desire for meaning and the universe's resounding silence in response. This tension is not merely an abstract idea, but a lived experience, one that Camus explores with striking clarity and depth in works like The Myth of Sisyphus. In this seminal essay, Camus defines the absurd as the confrontation between the human need for purpose and the irrational, indifferent nature of the world. It is the moment when we realize that our deepest questions, why are we here, what is the meaning of life, are met not with answers, but with an uncaring void. For Camus, the absurd is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be acknowledged, confronted, and ultimately embraced. The absurd arises from a fundamental conflict, the collision between our innate desire for meaning and the universe's inherent meaninglessness. As human beings, we are meaning-making creatures. We seek patterns, narratives, and explanations to give structure to our lives. We yearn for a sense of purpose, a reason for our existence that transcends the mundane. This longing for meaning is deeply ingrained in us, driving our actions, our relationships, and our pursuit of knowledge. Yet, the universe, as Camus observes, operates without regard for our desires. It is vast, indifferent, and devoid of any inherent meaning or moral order. The stars do not shine to guide us. The seasons do not change to teach us lessons. This disconnect between our longing for significance and the universe's silence creates the absurd. It is the realization that, no matter how fervently we search for answers, the cosmos remains unmoved, offering no grand design or ultimate purpose. In the Myth of Sisyphus, Camus illustrates this conflict through the metaphor of Sisyphus, the mythical figure condemned by the gods to eternally roll a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down. Sisyphus' endless futile labor mirrors the human condition. We strive for meaning, only to find our efforts seemingly in vain. Yet Camus does not see Sisyphus' fate as a tragedy. Instead, he suggests that Sisyphus can find happiness in his struggle, not because his labor has meaning, but because he accepts the absurdity of his condition. By embracing his fate, Sisyphus transcends it, finding a kind of freedom in the act of rebellion against the absurd. This paradoxical conclusion lies at the heart of Camus' philosophy. The recognition of life's meaninglessness is not a cause for despair, but an opportunity for liberation. To fully grasp the absurd is to understand that life has no predetermined meaning, and this realization, though initially unsettling, can be profoundly freeing. When we accept that the universe does not provide us with a ready-made purpose, we are released from the burden of searching for one. Instead, we are empowered to create our own meaning, to define our existence on our own terms. This is the essence of Camus' rebellion against the absurd, not a rejection of life, but an affirmation of it. In embracing the absurd, we confront the indifference of the universe with clarity and courage, and in doing so, we reclaim our freedom. We are no longer bound by the illusion of external meaning. Instead, we are free to live authentically, to find joy in the present moment, and to embrace the beauty and chaos of existence. Camus' philosophy of the absurd, far from being a call to nihilism, is an invitation to live with greater intensity and awareness. By recognizing the absurd, we are liberated from the false comforts of dogma and illusion, and we are challenged to confront life as it is, raw, unpredictable, and ultimately ours to shape. This liberation is not without its difficulties. To live in full awareness of the absurd is to live without the crutches of religion, ideology, or any other system that promises ultimate meaning. It requires us to face the uncertainty of existence head-on, to accept that life is fleeting, and that our actions, no matter how significant they may seem to us, are ultimately inconsequential in the grand scheme of the universe. Yet it is precisely this acceptance that opens the door to true freedom. When we stop searching for answers that do not exist, we are free to focus on the here and now, to find joy in the simple act of being alive. In the Myth of Sisyphus, Camus writes, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." This statement, at first glance paradoxical, encapsulates the essence of Camus' thought. Happiness, for Camus, is not found in the achievement of some grand purpose but in the act of living itself. It is found in the struggle, in the rebellion against the absurd, in the refusal to be defeated by the meaninglessness of existence. By embracing the absurd, we learn to live with a sense of urgency and passion, to savor the fleeting moments of beauty and connection that make life worth living. We become, in Camus' words, the absurd hero, who finds joy not in the destination but in the journey. Following Camus, it is necessary to explore how this recognition of the absurd can serve as a foundation for happiness, offering a unique and transformative perspective on how to live a fulfilling life in a world without inherent meaning. This means that embracing the absurd can lead to greater freedom, creativity, and resilience, whereby Camus' philosophy can provide a roadmap for navigating the complexities and uncertainties of modern existence. For now, let us sit with the absurd, not as a source of despair, but as a gateway to freedom, a reminder that, in the absence of answers, we are free to create our own. The absurd is not a prison but a liberation, a call to live fully and authentically in a world that offers no guarantees. It is, as Camus would say, an invitation to imagine Sisyphus happy. Chapter 2. Revolt and Acceptance in the Face of the Absurd. Albert Camus does not advocate for despair or resignation. Instead, he proposes a radical response: revolt. For Camus, revolt is not a violent uprising but a conscious, defiant act of embracing life despite its inherent meaninglessness. It is a refusal to be crushed by the absurd, and a determination to live with authenticity and passion. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus writes, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." This notion of revolt lies at the heart of Camus' philosophy, offering a pathway to happiness that is rooted not in the pursuit of meaning but in the act of living itself. Revolt, as Camus defines it, begins with the recognition of the absurd. When we confront the absurd, the conflict between our desire for meaning and the universe's indifference, we are faced with a choice. We can either succumb to despair, as the existential nihilist might, or we can rebel against the absurd by choosing to live fully and passionately. Camus argues that the latter is the only authentic response. In The Myth of Sisyphus, he states, "The absurd man says yes, and his effort will henceforth be unceasing. By saying yes to life, even in the absence of meaning, we affirm our existence and assert our freedom." This act of rebellion is not about changing the world, but about changing our relationship to it. It is about finding joy and purpose in the act of living, even when life itself seems devoid of ultimate significance. Central to Camus' notion of revolt is the importance of embracing the present moment. In a universe that offers no guarantees or grand narratives, the present is all we have. Camus urges us to live fully in the here and now, to savor the fleeting moments of beauty and connection that make life worth living. In The Myth of Sisyphus, he writes, "But what is happiness except the simple harmony between a man and the life he leads? This harmony is not found in the pursuit of some distant goal or the search for eternal meaning, but in the act of living itself. By embracing the present moment, we free ourselves from the tyranny of the past and the future, and we open ourselves to the richness of lived experience." Camus' emphasis on the present moment is closely tied to his concept of quantum happiness, a term he uses to describe the small fleeting moments of joy that punctuate our lives. In The Rebel, he writes, "Happiness, too, is inevitable. These moments of happiness are not dependent on external circumstances or the achievement of some grand purpose. They arise from our ability to fully engage with the present. Whether it is the warmth of the sun on our skin, the laughter of a loved one, or the simple pleasure of a shared meal, these moments remind us that life, even in its absurdity, is worth living. By embracing the present, we cultivate a deeper appreciation for the beauty and richness of existence. Accepting the absurd, far from leading to despair, allows for a greater appreciation of life's experiences. When we let go of the need for ultimate meaning, we are free to find value in the here and now. Camus illustrates this idea through the figure of Sisyphus, who, despite his eternal struggle, finds happiness in the act of rolling his boulder up the hill. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus concludes, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. This happiness is not derived from the achievement of a goal, but from the act of striving itself. By accepting his fate, Sisyphus transcends it, finding joy in the very act of living." Camus' philosophy of revolt and acceptance offers a profound and liberating perspective on happiness. By embracing the absurd, we are freed from the burden of searching for meaning and are invited to live fully and authentically in the present moment. This act of rebellion is not a denial of life's challenges, but an affirmation of its possibilities. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus writes, "There is no fate that cannot be surmounted by scorn. By scorning the absurd, by refusing to be defeated by it, we reclaim our freedom and find happiness in the act of living itself." Considering these ideas of Camus, it is up to us to explore how this philosophy of revolt and acceptance can be applied to our daily lives, offering practical insights into how we can find joy and fulfillment in a world without inherent meaning. Chapter 3: Finding Happiness in the Absurd. Albert Camus' philosophy of the absurd is often misunderstood as a bleak or nihilistic worldview, but at its core lies a profound and liberating vision of happiness. For Camus, happiness is not found in the pursuit of grand, universal meaning, but in the act of living authentically and passionately in a world that offers no guarantees. In his works, particularly The Myth of Sisyphus and The Stranger, Camus explores how embracing the absurd can lead to a deeper, more fulfilling sense of joy. This chapter delves into Camus' ideas on happiness, emphasizing the importance of finding joy in simple things, human connection, and the creation of personal meaning through values and actions. Camus' concept of happiness is rooted in the acceptance of life's inherent meaninglessness. In The Myth of Sisyphus, he writes, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." This statement, which concludes his essay, encapsulates Camus' belief that happiness is not dependent on external achievements or the discovery of ultimate meaning. Instead, it arises from the act of living itself, from the courage to confront the absurd and find joy in the present moment. For Camus, happiness is not a destination but a way of being, a conscious choice to embrace life in all its beauty and chaos. One of the key ways Camus suggests we can find happiness is by appreciating the simple, everyday moments that make life worth living. In The Stranger, the protagonist, Mersault, finds a deep sense of contentment in the sensory experiences of the world around him. Sitting on a beach, feeling the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the water, Mersault is fully present in the moment, free from the burdens of past regrets or future anxieties. Camus writes, "I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, so like a brother really. I felt that I had been happy and that I was happy again." This passage highlights Camus' belief that happiness can be found in the simple, sensory pleasures of life, in the act of being fully present and engaged with the world. Human connection is another vital source of happiness in Camus' philosophy. In The Plague, Camus explores the importance of solidarity and compassion in the face of suffering. The characters in the novel, confronted with the absurdity of a deadly epidemic, find meaning and joy in their relationships with one another. Through acts of kindness, empathy, and mutual support, they create a sense of purpose and belonging that transcends the absurdity of their situation. Camus writes, "What's true of all the evils in the world is true of the plague as well. It helps men to rise above themselves." This idea underscores the importance of human connection in finding happiness, even in the most challenging circumstances. Camus also emphasizes the role of personal values and actions in creating meaning and fulfillment. In the absence of inherent meaning, we are free to define our own values and live according to them. This act of creation is a form of rebellion against the absurd, a way of asserting our freedom and affirming our existence. In The Rebel, Camus writes, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. By living in accordance with our values, whether through acts of creativity, kindness, or justice, we create our own meaning and find fulfillment in the process." Camus' philosophy offers a powerful reminder that happiness is not something we find but something we create. It is not dependent on external circumstances or the discovery of ultimate meaning, but on our ability to embrace the present moment, connect with others, and live according to our values. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus writes, "But what is happiness except the simple harmony between a man and the life he leads? This harmony is not found in the pursuit of grand, universal truths, but in the act of living authentically and passionately, in the face of life's inherent absurdity." Chapter 4, Camus' Absurd Hero as a Model for Happiness. Albert Camus' philosophy of the absurd is not merely an abstract meditation on the human condition. It is a call to action, a blueprint for living authentically and passionately in a world devoid of inherent meaning. Central to this philosophy is the figure of the absurd hero, a person who confronts the absurd head-on and finds happiness not in spite of it, but because of it. Through characters like Mersault in The Stranger and Dr. Rio in The Plague, Camus provides vivid examples of individuals who embody the principles of the absurd hero. These characters, though vastly different in their circumstances and personalities, share a common thread. They find happiness through their acceptance of fate, their engagement with the world, and their appreciation for life's fleeting experiences. This chapter explores how Mersault and Dr. Rio serve as models for finding happiness within the absurd. Mersault, embracing the indifference of the world. Mersault, the protagonist of The Stranger, is perhaps Camus' most iconic absurd hero. His story begins with the stark declaration, "Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I don't know." This opening line sets the tone for Mersault's detached and indifferent approach to life. He is a man who lives entirely in the present moment, unburdened by societal expectations or the search for meaning. Mersault's indifference to conventional norms often makes him appear apathetic, but it is precisely this indifference that allows him to embrace the absurd and find a peculiar kind of happiness. Throughout the novel, Mersault finds joy in the simple sensory experiences of life. Sitting on his balcony feeling the warmth of the sun or swimming in the sea, he is fully present in the moment, free from the anxieties of the past or the future. In one poignant scene, Mersault reflects, "I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, so like a brother really. I felt that I had been happy, and that I was happy again." The stranger. This acceptance of the world's indifference is key to Mersault's happiness. By embracing the absurd, he finds a sense of harmony with the universe, even in the face of its meaninglessness. Mersault's ultimate act of rebellion against the absurd comes at the end of the novel, when he is sentenced to death for killing an Arab. Facing his execution, Mersault refuses to seek solace in religion or false hope. Instead, he fully accepts his fate, finding peace in the knowledge that life, though meaningless, is still worth living. As he awaits his death, he reflects, "I had only to wish that there be a large crowd of spectators the day of my execution and that they greet me with cries of hate." The stranger. This acceptance of his fate and his refusal to be defeated by the absurd is what makes Mersault an absurd hero. He finds happiness not in the pursuit of meaning but in the act of living authentically and passionately. Dr. Rio. Finding meaning in solidarity and action in the plague. Camus presents a different kind of absurd hero in the character of Dr. Bernard Rio. Unlike Mersault, who is detached and indifferent, Dr. Rio is deeply engaged with the world and committed to helping others. When the plague strikes the town of Oran, Dr. Rio does not succumb to despair or resignation. Instead, he throws himself into the fight against the disease, working tirelessly to save lives and alleviate suffering. His actions are not motivated by a belief in ultimate meaning or a higher purpose, but by a simple commitment to human solidarity and compassion. Dr. Rio's acceptance of the absurd is evident in his pragmatic approach to the plague. He recognizes that the disease is a random and senseless tragedy, but he does not allow this recognition to paralyze him. Instead, he finds meaning in the act of rebellion against the absurd. As he explains, "What's true of all the evils in the world is true of the plague as well. It helps men to rise above themselves." The plague. By fighting the plague, Dr. Rio asserts his freedom and affirms his existence, even in the face of a meaningless universe. Throughout the novel, Dr. Rio finds happiness not in the eradication of the plague, but in the act of fighting it. He derives joy from his connections with others, from the small victories he achieves, and from the knowledge that he is living authentically and with integrity. In one particularly moving passage, Dr. Rio reflects on the importance of human connection. The only way to fight the plague is with decency. The plague. This decency, this commitment to helping others, is what gives Dr. Rio's life meaning and allows him to find happiness within the absurd. The absurd hero as a model for happiness. Both Mersault and Dr. Rio, despite their differences, embody the principles of Camus' absurd hero. They find happiness not by searching for ultimate meaning, but by embracing the absurd and living authentically in the present moment. Mersault's acceptance of the world's indifference and his appreciation for life's simple pleasures demonstrate that happiness can be found in the act of living itself. Dr. Rio's commitment to solidarity and action shows that happiness can also be found in the act of rebellion against the absurd, in the fight for human dignity and compassion. Camus' absurd hero offers a powerful model for how we might find happiness in a world without inherent meaning. By embracing the absurd, we are freed from the burden of searching for ultimate purpose and are invited to live fully and authentically in the present moment. This act of rebellion is not a denial of life's challenges, but an affirmation of its possibilities. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus writes, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." The Myth of Sisyphus. By scorning the absurd, by refusing to be defeated by it, we reclaim our freedom and find happiness in the act of living itself. Conclusion. At first glance, Albert Camus' philosophy of the absurd may appear deeply pessimistic. After all, his central premise, that life has no inherent meaning and that the universe is indifferent to our existence, seems to offer little comfort. Yet as we delve deeper into Camus' works, such as The Myth of Sisyphus and The Stranger, a surprising truth emerges. His philosophy, far from being a counsel of despair, offers a profound and liberating path to happiness. By accepting the absurd, revolting against meaninglessness, and embracing the present moment, Camus invites us to find joy and fulfillment in the very act of living. The absurd as a path to happiness. Camus' philosophy begins with the recognition of the absurd, the conflict between humanity's search for meaning and the universe's silence. In The Myth of Sisyphus, he writes, "The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. This confrontation, while initially unsettling, is not a dead end but a starting point. Camus argues that by acknowledging the absurd, we free ourselves from the futile search for ultimate meaning and open ourselves to the possibility of living authentically. Happiness, for Camus, is not found in the discovery of some grand purpose but in the act of embracing life as it is, in all its beauty and chaos. The absurd hero, exemplified by figures like Sisyphus and Revolt, demonstrates that happiness is not dependent on external circumstances or the achievement of lofty goals. Instead, it arises from the courage to confront the absurd and find joy in the present moment. In the Myth of Sisyphus, Camus concludes, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. This happiness is not derived from the success of Sisyphus' task, but from his acceptance of it. By embracing his fate, Sisyphus transcends it, finding freedom and fulfillment in the act of rebellion against the absurd. Acceptance, revolt, and the present moment. Central to Camus' philosophy is the idea of acceptance. To accept the absurd is to recognize that life has no inherent meaning and to embrace this reality with clarity and courage. This acceptance is not a passive resignation but an active engagement with life. In The Stranger, Revolt embodies this approach. He lives entirely in the present moment, finding joy in the simple sensory experiences of life. Reflecting on his existence, Revolt says, "I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, so like a brother really. I felt that I had been happy and that I was happy again." The Stranger. This acceptance of the world's indifference allows Revolt to find peace and happiness in the here and now. Revolt. Another key concept in Camus' philosophy is the act of rebelling against the absurd. It is a refusal to be crushed by the meaninglessness of existence, and a determination to live with authenticity and passion. In The Rebel, Camus writes, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. This rebellion is not about changing the world, but about changing our relationship to it. By living in accordance with our values and embracing the present moment, we assert our freedom and affirm our existence." Embracing the present moment is perhaps the most practical and accessible aspect of Camus' philosophy. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, the present moment offers a refuge. By focusing on the here and now, we free ourselves from the anxieties of the past and the future, and we open ourselves to the richness of lived experience. Camus' emphasis on the present moment is a reminder that happiness is not something we find but something we create, moment by moment, through our engagement with the world. The enduring relevance of Camus' ideas in the modern world, where the search for meaning often feels more urgent and elusive than ever, Camus' philosophy offers a refreshing and liberating perspective. His ideas remind us that happiness is not dependent on external achievements or the discovery of ultimate purpose. Instead, it is found in the act of living authentically and passionately. In the face of life's inherent absurdity, Camus' absurd hero, whether it is Sisyphus, Revolt, or Dr. Rio, serves as a powerful model for how we might navigate the complexities and uncertainties of modern existence. Camus' philosophy also speaks to the importance of human connection and solidarity. In The Plague, Dr. Rio finds meaning and happiness not in the eradication of the disease, but in the act of fighting it, in his connections with others, and in his commitment to human dignity. This emphasis on solidarity and compassion is particularly relevant in a world that often feels divided and fragmented. Camus' ideas remind us that even in the face of life's absurdity, we can find joy and fulfillment in our relationships with others. In conclusion, Camus' philosophy of the absurd, while seemingly pessimistic, offers a profound and liberating path to happiness. By accepting the absurd, revolting against meaninglessness, and embracing the present moment, we can find joy and fulfillment in the very act of living. As Camus writes in The Myth of Sisyphus, "In the midst of winter I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. This invincible summer is the happiness that comes from embracing the absurd, from living fully and passionately in the present moment, and from finding joy in the act of rebellion against the absurd. It is a reminder that even in the face of life's inherent meaninglessness, we are free to create our own meaning and to find happiness in the act of living."